Let's start with the presentation.
Okay.
Just a minute.
Okay.
Request to all of you that please keep your mics muted. In case you have any doubt, please send me your doubts through chat. Okay.
Yes.
Just a second. So let's start. So as discussed, again, good evening all. It's a pleasure to have all of you here in the meeting, and I hope that all of you will enjoy this session. So I can see that there is a black box coming here, so I'll share the presentation again. Just give me a minute. Okay, so as discussed, we are going to start with direct and inverse proportion. Okay, so before we exactly jump into the topic, what are we going to start with? We are going to have a look at some pictures and some situations. So on this first slide itself, you can see that we are preparing a cup of tea. Okay, now all of you or some of you might already may be preparing a cup of tea at home. Okay, so you can see that we have taken, for a cup of tea, we have taken 1 teaspoon of sugar, 1 teaspoon of tea powder, and half a cup of milk and half a cup of water. And what is the result? We see that the person has liked the tea. He's enjoying that tea, right? We see that the person is enjoying the tea. Okay, now we move to the next slide. Okay, we move to the next slide. And here we see that we are preparing 2 cups of tea, for which we have taken 1 cup of milk and 1 cup of water. Both together make 2 cups of solution. And for this, we are taking only 1 cup of tea powder and 1 teaspoon of tea powder and 1 teaspoon of sugar, right? And what is the outcome? Can you see all? We were preparing that tea for 2 people. And what is the outcome? They are so unhappy, right? These 2 people are so unhappy. Oh no, this tea is so tasteless. Oh no. So what went wrong, right? What went wrong? So we could see dissatisfaction on the faces of those 2 people. So you must all may be wondering that what went wrong. Okay, so let's see what went wrong. Now, when we analyze what went wrong, we realize and say that the proportion in second case, where we were preparing 2 cups of tea, was not correct, right? Whatever proportion of sugar and tea we used for 1 cup of tea, the same amount we used for 2 cups of tea, which was not correct, because the quantity of tea to be prepared was increased, but we didn't increase the quantity of tea and sugar to be used. And in that situation, we say that the proportion was not correct. So many a times in our day-to-day life also, we use the word proportion, right? So you may be drawing something and you may realize, oh, this is not proportionate. If you're attempting to draw a human figure, you might realize, or your drawing teacher may tell you that something is not proportionate, right? So in our day-to-day life, we use the term proportion and proportionate quite often. But here we are going to discuss proportion from mathematics point of view. So we start with definition or maybe notion or what is meant by proportion. So we see here that proportion is comparison of 2 ratios. Okay, proportion is comparison of 2 ratios. Or in other words, it's a statement that tells us that the given ratios are equal. Okay, so if we wanted to make 2 cups of tea, then in that case, we would have used 2 teaspoons of sugar for 2 cups of tea and 2 teaspoons of tea powder. Are you able to hear me? Are you all able to hear me? Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great. So in case you feel that you are not able to hear me, just let me know, okay? Okay. So coming back to the presentation, so we see that when we were preparing 1 cup of tea, we added 1 teaspoon of sugar. Now when we wanted to make 2 cups of tea, we should add 2 teaspoons of sugar. Similarly, for 1 cup of tea, we should add 1 teaspoon of tea powder, and for 2 cups, 2 teaspoons of tea powder. Okay, so this is the proportion we should take care of. And I'm pretty sure that whenever you are preparing tea or such kind of food items at home, you definitely must be taking care of proportion. Okay, now coming back to mathematics. So from mathematics point of view, there are 2 types of proportion. From mathematics point of view, there are 2 types of proportion. First is direct proportion and second is inverse proportion. You should be careful while discussing or talking about the second kind of proportion. It is inverse proportion. Okay, so inverse has got a peculiar meaning and because of which it has been used. So what is that meaning? We'll see it later. So we come to direct proportion. Okay, so we come to direct proportion. What is the definition of direct proportion? Always we start with the formal definition. Okay, whenever we are discussing any topic from science or mathematics, we start with formal definition. Okay, so what is that formal definition? When 2 or more ratios are equal to a constant, then the given ratios are said to be in direct proportion. Okay, so this is the definition. What exactly does this mean? Okay, so it means that in direct proportion, when one quantity increases, other quantity also increases. So as in the first scenario, we were preparing 1 cup of tea, we used 1 teaspoon of sugar. In second scenario, we were preparing 2 cups of tea, we were supposed to use or we should have used 2 teaspoons of sugar. So quantity of tea was increased, quantity of sugar also got increased. Okay. Now, whereas, so we discussed about when one quantity increases, other also increases. Similarly, when one quantity decreases, other quantity also decreases. Okay. And these two ratios of two quantities or the ratios of these two quantities, this must remain constant. Okay, now this is all jargon in the words. This is all jargon in words. So now we are going to take specific examples so as to understand the exact meaning of direct proportion. Okay, so let's discuss what this exactly means. Now here you can see that now this must be the day-to-day life scenario, right? Example. For example, we buy an apple for rupees 15, you'll pay rupees 30 when you want to pay when you want to buy 2 apples. And when you want to buy 3 apples, you have to pay 45 rupees. Okay. And when you want to buy 6 apples, you have to pay 90 rupees. So you can see that this is a table, right? This is a table which has got 2 columns. Okay. And these are the 2 quantities which form a ratio. Okay. These are the 2 quantities which form a ratio. So we can see that when the quantity in the first column, which is denoted by X, as it increases, the corresponding quantity in the second column denoted by Y also increases. Okay, so we see that the quantity given in the first column denoted by X, when it increases, the quantity in the second column also increases. Okay, so you can see a table here, right? You can see a table here. So what has been done here? Just give me a minute. It seems that someone is waiting in the waiting room. Just give me a minute, okay? Just a second. Somehow here I didn't get the waiting room notification. Just a minute.
Yeah, ma'am, I'm in.
Okay, great. Okay. So,
Ma'am, I was disconnected, ma'am. So can you
okay,
tell me
no problem.
only?
No problem. So we'll resume our session, okay? So we were discussing about the relationship between two quantities, number of apples and their cost. Okay, number of apples and their cost. Now here you can see another tabular representation where we can see number of apples and their respective costs. So what is this actually indicating? Now there is a ratio which has been formed using number of apples to cost of apples. So number of apples to cost of apples. Okay. So here in the first scenario, we see that number of apples is 1 and cost of apples is 15. So the ratio become 1:15 or 1/15. In second case, it becomes 2:30 or 2/30. That is, if you can see 2/30 can be reduced further, right? 2/30 can be reduced further. Thereby we obtain the reduced form as 1/15. Similarly, 3/45 can be reduced further, thereby giving us 1/15. Could you please mute your mics? Whoever has got unmuted your mic, please mute your mics. Okay. And there is someone whose ID is 4B538584. Could you please rename yourself so that we can retain you in the meeting? Else I'll remove you from the meeting. Okay. Rename yourself so that I get to know your name, else I'll remove you from the meeting. Okay, it has to be the valid name. Have you done that? Have you done that? I think that person is not able to hear me. Who's it? Okay. So we'll wait for a couple of more minutes for that person to rename. Now you can see that 3/45 becomes 1/15 because 3/45 can be reduced further by dividing both numerator and denominator by 3. And the last ratio is 6/90, which again can be reduced to 1/15. So here we come to know about the equation for direct proportion. We come to know about equation for direct proportion. So in case of a direct proportion, there are two rules. two characteristics or two parameters which should be fulfilled. First is when one quantity increases, even other should increase. And second, the most important one is the ratio of those two quantities, that is x upon y, should be constant. The way we can see it here, right? The ratio 1 upon 15 is constant. Okay, then and then only we say that these two quantities are in direct proportion. Okay, now to understand this further, we'll take an example. To understand this further, we'll take an example. So what is that example? So we are finding proportion for cost of pens or for number of pens and their cost. So it's a typo here. So we are finding proportion for number of pens and their cost. So here we see that we have been provided with a table. Okay. So what is that table? So number of pens, if it is 1, we don't know how much is the cost. But if the number of pens is 2, the cost is 24. Okay. In third case, we see that we don't know how many pens have been bought, but the cost is 36. And in the last case, we see the number of pens and we have to find the cost of pens. Now, how should we proceed here? How should we proceed here? So even you must have experienced the same thing or observed the same thing. You must have already bought pens or pencils from the stationery shop, right? So if you're buying same kinds of pens or pencils, more than one from the stationery shop, then you have to do a certain calculation. There you observe that as the number of pens increase, then the cost of pens also increases. Okay, so to solve this problem, the first step is to figure out constant k. The first step is to figure out constant k. So what do we do for that? Okay, so what do we do for that? Now you can see that the constant can be figured out by means of these two values. Here we can see that there are two pens which cost 24. There are two pens which cost 24. Okay, so how do we find constant k? Constant k is equal to x upon y, right? And one more thing you must have observed that those blanks, I have named them. I have named those blanks. So these first two quantities, that in first case, number of pens will be referred to as x1 and their cost will be referred to as y1. In third case, the number of pens will be referred to as x3 and their cost will be referred to as 36. And in last case, number of pens will be referred to as x4 and their cost will be referred to as y4. Okay, so the first step is to find the value of k, where both x2 and y2 are given. Okay, so you can see here that k is equal to x2 upon y2. You can see here that k is equal to x2 upon y2. What is the value of x2? It is 2. What is the value of y2? It is 24. So we get k is equal to 2 upon 24. So what does it yield us? It gives us k is equal to 1 upon 12 because 2 upon 24 can be reduced to 1 upon 12. So you can see here I have written k is equal to 1 upon 12 here. Now this is the important step whenever we are solving the problems of direct proportion. We must first obtain the value of k. Okay. Next. Now I'm going to find the value of y1. Okay. So what did we discuss? The number of pens and cost of pens are in direct proportion. So whenever they are in direct proportion, x upon y is equal to constant. What is the equation for direct proportion? X upon y is equal to constant. Now here we want to find the value of y1. Therefore, x1 upon y1 is equal to constant. So here you can see that k is equal to x1 upon y1. We have the value of k, which is 1 upon 12. So we have the value of k 1 upon 12 and x1 is given as 1. We don't know y1. So once we solve this, we get y1 is equal to 12. So cost of one pen is rupees 12. Cost of one pen is rupees 12. And here to confirm, I have figured out the value of k for x1 upon y1, which comes out to be 1 upon 12, which is same as the value of k for 2 upon 24, which is 1 upon 12, right? Now we'll try to find this x3. Has anyone of you already found out the value of x3? If you have found out, then I want the answer through chat, okay? Don't unmute yourself, okay? So answers through chat are most welcome. Now you can see that to find the value of x3, again the same rule. Number of pens and cost of pens are in direct proportion. So the equation for direct proportion is x upon y is equal to constant. Equation for direct proportion is x upon y is equal to constant. So in this case, it will be x3 upon y3 is equal to constant. So I'm getting answers. Let me check the answers. So I can see, yes, I'm getting correct answers. Great. Great to see getting correct answers. Okay. So x3 upon y3 is equal to constant. So x3 is unknown. x3 upon 36 is equal to constant k is equal to 1 upon 12. So we get x3 upon 36 is equal to 1 upon 12. Once we solve it, we get x3 is equal to 3. So all of you, whoever answered me the correct, whoever answered me correctly, good job. Okay. Now we move to the next part. So we have yet to find the value of y4. So you can see here that till this point we have found out the value of y1 and x3. Now the next task is to find the value of y4. Same logic. They are in direct proportion, right? They are in direct proportion. What is the equation for direct proportion? X upon y is equal to constant. Hence, in this case, it is x4 upon y4 is equal to constant. So I'm getting correct answers. Just a minute. Just a second. Okay. So I'm getting correct answers. So the task is to find the cost of 6 pence. So it becomes x4 upon y4 is equal to constant. Substituting the value of x4 as 6, we get 6 upon y4 is equal to 1 upon 12. So once we solve it, we get y4 is equal to 72, right? So this is how you approach the problems of direct proportion. So what is the most important part is that you should check when one quantity is increasing, the other is also increasing. Okay, when one quantity is increasing, other is also increasing. Okay, and x upon y is equal to constant is what we get. Okay, now once we have done this, next what? So are we supposed to do only these many calculations? Of course not. So we must test whatever we have discussed here, is it clear to you? Okay, whatever we have discussed here, is it clear to you? So how do we do that? So we should have some questions solved, right? So many a times the understanding is checked by means of some word problems, right? Word problems are there to test your understanding. if you have understood the given concept clearly or not. Okay, so we come to the next problem or next part, that is questions on direct proportion. So what is the first question? If a laborer earns rupees 784 per week, how much does he earn in 15 days? So how many days are there in a week? How many days are there in a week? Anyone? Okay, great. So I'm getting answers through chat. Yes. So there are 7 days in a week. So a person is getting 784 rupees for 7 days. If that person works for 15 days, he will definitely get more money, right? So such kind of situations are the situations of direct proportion. So what is the equation? So at that time, what should we do? We should recall the equation for direct proportion. What is that equation? X upon y is equal to constant. Okay, so we have realized that this problem is of direct proportion and x upon y is equal to k is the equation for direct proportion. But what are the two quantities here that we are discussing? What are the two quantities here that we are discussing? It is number of days and money earned. What are the two quantities? Number of days and money earned. Okay, so I have already started getting answers, but give me some time. So I want to actually solve this problem. Okay. So I want to actually solve this problem. So all of you looks like all of you are very quick, huh? So what are we going to do? We are going to solve this problem. Okay. So what is that problem? 784 for 7 days. Okay. Just a second. So what are the two quantities that we must see here? What are the two quantities? The quantities are number of days. The quantities are number of days and money earned. Okay. So we are going to call number of days as X and money earned as Y. Okay. So in such cases, first we must write the given. Okay. So number of days, that is X1 is equal to 7 and money earned, that is Y1 is equal to rupees 784. Okay. What is to find? To find? To find is money earned for 15 days. Okay. Solution. So you must follow such kind of steps. Okay. This is the practice that you should have. Okay. So given, you must write down given first, followed by to find, and then only you should proceed to solution. Okay. So why should you follow this practice? So first and foremost is you get marks for this. And second important is that once you write down given and to find, half of the problem is clear to you. Okay, it gives you the direction in which you must think. So it is very important to have these steps. Now we are going to write that let the number of days, or let the number of days y2 is equal to 15. So as these two quantities are in direct proportion, we know the equation x upon y, x upon y, x upon y is equal to constant. Okay. So because of this, we get x1 upon y1, we get x1 upon y1 is equal to, we get x2 upon y2. Okay, we get x2 upon y2. Right? Why is it so? Because x upon y is k, so this gives us x1 upon y1. This gives us x1 upon y1 is equal to constant. Similarly, it gives us x2 upon y2. It gives us x2 upon y2 is equal to constant. Therefore, we get x1 upon y1 is equal to x2 upon y2. Now start substituting the values. So what is x1? It is, just a minute. Number of days is represented by x1, right? So this is x2. Okay. I think I should check some of the answers. Give me a minute. So whatever answers, wow, I have got almost all correct answers. Great. So I have got correct answers till now. Whoever have sent me the answers, they are correct ones. Okay. Coming back to the problem here. So x1 is number of days. So in the first scenario, how much is the number of days? It is 7, right? So how much is the money earned in 7 days? It is 784, which is equal to, what is the number of days in second case? It is 15. What is the money earned in the second scenario? It is y2. Okay. Now you have to solve it. Okay. How can we approach this problem? First step is cross multiplication. First step is cross multiplication. So 7 multiplied by y2 is equal to 15 multiplied by 784. Now I can send this 7 on other side. So we get y2 is equal to 15 into 784 divided by 7. Once you solve it, how should you approach that? You should try to divide this by 7. You should check whether it is divisible or not. And most of the times, please remember, most of the times, whenever you get such kinds of problems, these numbers are usually divisible. So if they have given us this 784, so 15 is definitely not divisible by 7. So other number 784, it has to be divisible by 7. So what do we see? 784 divided by 7 gives us 112, right? Now you carry out the multiplication. So what is the answer? 1680, right? It is 1680. Therefore, final answer you can write it like money earned by the person in 15 days is equal to rupees 1680. So this is your complete solution. So whenever you are solving problems of mathematics, please remember getting correct answer is the ultimate goal. But along with that, how do you approach the problem? Writing down the steps is equally important. Okay. So writing down the steps is equally important. Very good. So I have got all the correct answers. Okay, I have got all the correct answers. Now, shall we move to the next question? Okay. So we move to the next question. Okay. Now the next question is 45 iron rods of the same size weigh 12.6 kg. How much is the weight of 24 such rods? So what are the two quantities that we are going to consider here? So in case of the problems of direct proportion, the first step is to figure out x and y. The first step is to figure out x and y. And why did I mean, how can we decide that this is the problem of direct proportion? Because you can see here is that they are talking about same kinds of rods. Now, as the number of rods has decreased, their weight also will decrease. That's what is the first characteristic or parameter that we check for direct proportion, right? As the number of rods decreases, their weight also decreases. Therefore, number of rods and their weight are in direct proportion. Now we have figured out that this is the problem of direct proportion. So what is X and Y? So let's take X as number of rods and Y as weight of rods. Okay, now we go back to our notepad where we are solving it. Okay, so we come back to the problem. So the second problem is, what is given? Number of rods is equal to 45. Weight of these rods is equal to, it is 12.6 kg, right? 12.6 kg. Now, as you can see that I'm going to name this as X1. Just a minute. Someone is trying to rejoin. Just give me a minute. I'm not able to let that person in. Okay, I think that I can start now. Okay, I have started getting answers now, but let me solve it here. Okay, so let me solve it here. Now you can see that weight of these rods is given as 12.6 kg. I'm going to denote it as Y1. As discussed earlier, we are going to denote them as X and Y. So number of rods in first scenario, we are going to refer to them as X1 now, and their weight as Y1. Okay, and they have given in second scenario, they have given number of rods, that is X2 is equal to 24, right? And what has to be found? We have to find weight of 24 rods. Okay, weight of 24 rods, that is Y2 is equal to question mark. Now we come to solution. Number of rods and their weight are in direct proportion. Okay, therefore we should use the equation of direct proportion, that is X upon Y is equal to constant. And as we discussed in the earlier problem, as it is a problem of direct proportion, we get X1 upon Y1 is equal to X2 upon Y2, right? X1 upon Y1 is equal to X2 upon Y2. Now what should be the next step? Next step is to substitute the value, that is X1 is equal to 45. So I'll start doing that. X1 is equal to 45 upon Y1 is equal to 12.6 upon Y1 is equal to 12.6 is equal to X2. How much is X2? It is 24 upon, do we know the weight of 24 rods? No. What are we going to denote it as? Y2. How do we solve this? By cross multiplication and then the further solution. So this comes out to be 45 multiplied by Y2 is equal to 24 multiplied by 12.6. So we get y2 is equal to 24 multiplied by 12.6 whole divided by 45. Now you'll have to solve it, okay? So what is the answer? Can someone tell me? I'm already getting the answers, of course. Just a minute. Oops, why? This seems to be, see, weight of 45 rods is 12.6 kg. If weight of 45 rods is 12.6 kg, if the number of rods is decreased, the weight also must decrease and it should be less than 12.6 kg, right? So your answer should be less than 12.6 kg. So I'm going to solve it as 24 multiplied by, I think it is 1.4 upon 5. I hope you are able to see the screen, right? Are you able to see the screen? Are you able to see the screen? Okay. So what is the answer? Who's going to give me the answer? Who's going to give me?
May I?
Who's this?
Ma'am, Medansh.
Yes. What is the answer?
Ma'am, 6.72 ma'am, kgs.
Yes. 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 I
Ma'am,
have
I
got.
by mistake wrote in chat, ma'am, because I did ma'am, vice
Okay.
versa, ma'am.
Okay. So once we solve it, we get y2 is equal to 6.72 kg. So why didn't I solve it here? Because it had a lot of calculation. Okay. Great. I'm getting good answers, correct answers. I'm quite happy. Good. Good to see the correct answers. Okay. So the final answer is, how do we write it? You should write the final answer, right? Weight of 24 rods is equal to 6.72 kg. Okay. So this is the final answer. And till this point, you must solve such kinds of problems. Now we come to the next problem. We come to the next problem. What is the next problem? So what is the next problem? If a car covers, now I feel that you should take this problem as a homework. Okay, I feel you should take this problem as a homework, as a practice for yourself. Okay, I could see that all of you are quite quick in solving such kinds of problems, right? So if a car covers, we'll just briefly discuss it here. If a car covers 56.7 kilometer in 4.5 liters of petrol, how many kilometers will it cover in 26 liters? So as we can see that there are two quantities, quantity of petrol and distance covered, right? Quantity of petrol and distance covered. As the quantity of petrol increases, of course, the distance covered will increase. Therefore, these two quantities are in direct proportion. Okay, these two quantities are in direct proportion. Direct proportion. So once you have figured out that they are in direct proportion, recall the equation for direct proportion. What is the equation for direct proportion? It is x upon y is equal to constant. It is x upon y is equal to constant. So here we will call distance as x and quantity of petrol as y. So x1 upon y1 is equal to x2 upon y2, right? I'll just show you the equation that gets formed. You can solve it as a homework. Okay, so I've already got an answer. So looks like I already got an answer. Okay, so it has got, just a second. Is my screen visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. So what are the two quantities? What are the two quantities here? What are the two quantities here? Please, can someone tell me so that I can copy it here? So petrol,
Ma'am,
let's, X1 is, how much is X1? Petrol.
ma'am, X1 is ma'am, petrol is 4.5 liters of petrol and 56.7 kilometer.
So I'm going to write petrol as X1, amount of petrol as X1, and it's equal to 4.5 liter, and distance covered is 56.7
kilometer.
kilometer. Okay. Then they have asked us distance covered in the next amount of
26
petrol, that is 26 liter.
26.
Getla na? Okay. So now again, so this is the quantity of petrol and we have to find the distance covered. Okay, so what does the equation become? X1 upon y1, x1 upon y1 is equal to x2 upon y2. Okay, is equal to x2 upon y2. So you are simply supposed to solve the values and then solve further. Now here the difficult part is that out of three quantities, two are given in decimals. So you should be able to handle the decimals carefully. So this becomes 4.5 upon 56.7 is equal to 26 upon y2. Now you are supposed to solve it at your end, okay? Not now, once the session is over, okay? But I already have got the answer. Let me check the answer and let you know later, okay? So you're supposed to do it as a homework. Have you noted this down? Have you noted this down? So that we can proceed further, okay? So that we can proceed further. Now we come back to the presentation. Now we come back to the presentation. So what is the next part? So what is the next part? Next part is we are going to discuss second kind of proportion, right? We are going to discuss second kind of proportion. What is it? It is called as inverse proportion. Okay, it is called as inverse proportion. It seems that somebody is already in the waiting room. I don't know who it is. Okay. So second kind of proportion is called as inverse proportion. Now, as I mentioned earlier, please remember that it is inverse proportion. Okay, inverse means in opposite direction. Okay, something changes in opposite direction. What does that mean exactly? So when one quantity increases, other decreases. When one quantity increases, other decreases. Or vice versa. That is, when one quantity decreases, other will increase. Okay. But again, what is the formal definition? What is the formal definition? It is when the product of two quantities is equal to a constant, then they are said to be in inverse proportion. Okay, so this is actually telling us about the equation for inverse proportion. Okay, so we'll see it. Now we discussed it in terms of words. We'll see it in terms of equation. Okay, so what is the equation? What is the equation for inverse proportion? The equation for inverse proportion is x multiplied by y is equal to constant. What was the equation for direct proportion? It was x upon y is equal to constant. In case of inverse proportion, it is x multiplied by y is equal to constant. Okay. Now, so what are the scenarios where this inverse proportion comes into picture? What are the scenarios where this inverse proportion comes into picture? Now, you must have seen that there are certain projects that are assigned to you in your schools, right? If a certain project is assigned only to you, it will take certain number of days. And if you are assigned a partner, that means your team has got 2 people, you'll observe that number of days or the time required to complete that project, it decreases. So what is this scenario? When the number of people working on a project increased, a number of days or the time required to finish that project got decreased. So such scenario describes or demonstrates inverse proportion. Similarly, whenever, we'll take an example. For example, we discuss about a journey from Pune to Mumbai. A particular location in Pune and a particular location in Mumbai. The distance is of 160 kilometers. Okay, so distance is constant and there are more than one vehicle that are going to cover this distance. So those vehicles, they have different speeds. So slower is the speed, more is the time taken to cover that distance, isn't it? So if person is going to go by walk, that person will definitely take longer time. Why? Because his speed will be slower. If a person goes by a bicycle, definitely that person will be faster than the person who's walking. So his speed will increase and hence the time required will decrease. So for a given distance, when speed increases, time required decreases. When speed decreases, time required increases. So we say that speed and time are in inverse proportion. Okay, they are in inverse proportion. So whenever two quantities are in inverse proportion, what is the equation? X into y is equal to constant. In case of inverse proportion, the equation is x into y is equal to constant. Okay, so the way we had an example for direct proportion, we are going to have similar example in case of inverse proportion. So here we are going to refer to speed as x and time as y. You can see a table here and you can see that there are certain blanks here for which we have to find. But how do we proceed? Similarly, first step is to find the value of k. What is the value of k? It is the product of x and y. So have they given us here both the values of x and y? Have they given here both the values of x and y? Yes, there is one scenario where both the values are given. When the speed is 32 kilometer per hour, what is the distance I said? It is 160 kilometers. The time taken is 5 hours. So we find the value of k. But before that, what have I done here? So first these two values will be referred to as x1, y1, x2, y2, x3, y3, x4, y4. Okay. Now I proceed to find the value of k. So as both x2 and y2 are given, k will be equal to product of x2 and y2. K is equal to product of x2 and y2. Why? Because for a given distance, speed and time are in inverse proportion. For a given distance, speed and time are in inverse proportion. That is, when speed increases, time required decreases. Therefore, equation for inverse proportion is x multiplied by y is equal to constant. Therefore, we get x2 is equal to y2 is equal to constant and we substitute the values. 32 multiplied by 5 gives us 160. So here we have found the value of k. Okay, now we are going to use this value of k to find the further values. So the next task is to find the value of y1. Now speed and time are in inverse proportion. So equation is x into y is equal to constant. That is x1 into y1 is equal to constant. So how much is x1? 20 multiplied by y1 is equal to k is 160. Just now we have calculated 160, right? So we get 20 into y1 is equal to 160. Once we solve this equation, we get y1 is equal to 8. That is, when the speed is 20 kilometer per hour, it takes 8 hours. And we have just confirmed that 20 multiplied by 8 gives us 160. Similarly, we are going to find x3. As speed and time are in inverse proportion, x3 into y3 is equal to constant. x3 into y3 is equal to constant. So x3 is unknown. x3 multiplied by 4 is equal to 160. x3 multiplied by 4 is equal to 160. So we get x3 is equal to 160 minus 4, that is equal to 40. So this means that when the journey takes 4 hours, that time the speed is 40 kilometer per hour. When it is told that the time taken for the journey is 4 hours, the speed is 40 kilometers per hour. Now we come to the last one. Now as we are considering example of Pune, Mumbai, so people use expressway where the speed limit is 80 kilometers per hour, right? So when a car is traveling at a speed of 80 kilometer per hour, how much will be the time taken? So the equation is x4 multiplied by y4 is equal to constant, giving us 80 multiplied by y4 is equal to 160. That is, y4 is equal to 160 upon 80, that is 2. So when the speed is 80 hours, time taken 80 kilometers per hour, the time taken is 2 hours. So here clearly we can see that as the speed started increasing, time taken started decreasing. Okay, and the product of speed and time is constant all the time. Okay, great. So most of the answers, whatever answers I got, yes, they are correct. Okay. Now we discuss the idea of inverse proportional as well. Now, how do we test whether we have understood it or not? We should have some problems, right? So what are those problems? Let's have a look. So at a fort, food stock is sufficient for 900 soldiers for 42 days. If there were 1400 soldiers, how long the same amount of food stock will last? Okay. So as the number of soldiers has increased and we have same amount of food stock, the number of days for which it will last will decrease. So as the number of soldier increases, number of days for which it is sufficient decreases. So it is the case of inverse proportion. So if it is the case of inverse proportion, what is the equation for inverse proportion? It is x into y is equal to constant. It is x into y is equal to constant. Now next step is, what should be x, what should be y? So let the number of soldiers be x and let the number of days be y. So let's start. Let's solve this problem. Okay. Just give me a minute. So we solve this problem. Okay. So you can see that Looks like I have started getting answers. Okay. So what is given? What is given? What is given? Number of soldiers, that is x1, is equal to, how much is it? 900. Number of days for which the stock is sufficient, let's denote it by y1, so which is 42. Number of soldiers, increased soldiers, is x2, is equal to, it is 1400, and number of days, so, and what has to be found? So we must write to find. What is to find? Number of days the food stock is sufficient for 1400 soldiers. Okay, so solution: number of soldiers and the number of days are inversely proportional. Therefore, xy is equal to constant. That is, x1 multiplied by y1 is equal to x2 multiplied by y2. Now substitute the values. What is x1? 900 multiplied by 42 is equal to 1400 multiplied by y2. So once we solve this, we get 900 multiplied by 42 whole divided by 1400 gives us y2. So once we solve it, what's the answer? So what is the answer of y2? So I'm getting some answers. Let me check the answers. Yes, some of the answers are correct. Some are. So if you see, the answer comes out to be 27 days, right? The answer comes out to be 27 days. Correct answer. So how did I solve this? Cutting these two zeros. Then 14 and 42 are divided as 14 ones are 14, 14 threes are 42, giving us 9 multiplied by 3, that is 27. So the answer is 27 days. But is this my complete solution? No. The complete solution is the food stock will last for 27 days for 1400 soldiers. Okay, so this is my complete solution. Okay, this is my complete solution. Now we come back to the, so have you all understood this? Can you please raise your hand? Now it's only me who's been talking, right? It's only me who's been talking. So how is it going? How is it going?
Nice, ma'am.
Okay. So is it clear? The discussion, is the discussion clear? Okay.
Yes.
Great. So shall we move to the next part? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So we can see that now it was about, the first problem was about number of people and number of days for which the given food stock was available. So as the number of people increases, number of days for which it was sufficient decreases, and vice versa. If number of people decreases, the number of days for which the same amount of food stock lasts, it increases. Now this is a problem which is very much used or asked for inverse proportion. It is number of people working to complete a given task. Okay, so if number of people working to complete a given task increases, number of days decrease. If number of people decrease, number of days required will increase. So this problem is again of inverse proportion. So what are the two quantities here? The two quantities are number of days and number of workers. So what are the two quantities? Number of days and number of workers. So how do we go about it? How do we go about it? Again, oh, I didn't note down the numbers. So what is given? Can someone tell me what is the given? Number of workers in for first case. How much is it? Can someone tell me? Can someone tell me?
4. No, ma'am, 6 it is.
It is 6.
6.
Yes, it is 6. So number of workers is 6, 9. Number of workers
Ma'am,
is 10.
workers is 10.
And number of days is 6, right?
6.
So in second case, number of days is given, right? That is 4 days. And we have to find number of workers. Okay, that is x2. Okay, x2 is equal to question mark. Solution, first you should write, whenever you are using that formula, first you should mention that number of workers and number of days are in inverse proportion, right? Therefore, the equation becomes x multiplied by y is equal to constant. That is, in this case, it becomes x multiplied by x1 multiplied by y1 is equal to x2 multiplied by y2. Substitute the values. How much is x1? 10 multiplied by 6 is equal to x2 is unknown multiplied by y2 is 4. So 10 multiplied by 6 whole divided by 4 gives us x2, that is number of workers. So we get x2 is equal to 15. That is we must write the final answer. Okay, so we must write the final answer as to complete the digging of trench in 4 days, 15 workers are required. This is our complete solution. Okay. Now looks like I have got correct answers. Great. Some of them are incorrect. I don't know. Maybe calculation mistake in case some of the answers are incorrect. Okay, so 15 workers are required. Okay. Now we come back to the presentation. So what is the presentation? What is the last? Now we have come to the last question. Okay, it's more than an hour, okay, that we have been speaking with each other, or I'm talking to you, because you're communicating only through chats. So here you can see that some work has to be completed. Okay, so always remember, whenever the condition is like some work has to be completed and they have given you number of days and number of workers, so in such scenario, number of days and number of workers, they always vary inversely, or they are always in inverse proportion. So here also 35 men take 8 days to reap a field. Now they have asked us that how many days 20 men will take to do the same job. Now here we can see that people working to complete this task has been reduced. So will the number of days increase or decrease? Of course it will increase, right? It will definitely increase. So such problems in which a particular work has to be completed and they have given you number of days and number of workers. In such scenario, you have to use the equation for inverse proportion. So you must identify which are the two quantities. So are you able to solve this equation? Are you able to solve this equation? Can someone answer me? Can someone answer me? Yes, I have got some of the correct answers. Some of the answers are correct. So do you want me to solve this answer, or do you feel that you can solve it yourself? Do you feel that you can solve it yourself? Now let's speak up. Let me know if you feel that you can solve it yourself. Okay. So what should we do? Do you want me to solve this problem? Correct. So I'm getting all the correct answers. Do you want me to solve this question? Now raise your hand in case you feel that I should solve this question. Raise your hand in case you want me to solve this question. Oh, no one wants me to solve this question. Okay. So, but you already have solved it, no, Gargi? So with this, you can see that we have come to the end of this session. Okay. So it was nice talking to you people. I hope you also enjoyed the session. I would like to hear the feedback from you. We already have the WhatsApp group through which you can send me your feedback. And I would really appreciate if you send me your feedback, a genuine one. Okay. So thank you. In case you have any doubts, we have the WhatsApp group. You can send me the messages there. In case you feel you are not able to solve a particular kind of problem, you can send me there. I will definitely share the solution there. Okay. So thank you again. I hope you enjoyed the session and hope to meet you all soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, ma'am.
Bye. So as I said, please, your feedback is most welcome. I would be waiting for your feedback. Okay. Chalo. Bye-bye. Have a nice weekend. Bye.